Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Alpha Anywhere Q&A webinar for July 20th, 2022. I'm Scott Allen, subbing in for Dave McCormick this week as he is away. But today we have a great presentation, another fabulous presentation by our illustrious Dion McCormick. He'll be showing us some cool new user interface features and also some XBasic editor refinements that he's found really useful in work he's doing right now. So this is all cool new stuff from our latest update. Dion, are you there?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Well, let me make you the presenter, sir.
Kind of glad you said illustrious versus infamous, so I'll take that.
One's better than the other, I suppose.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
My goal is not to scare people.
Yeah, no. I think you are the presenter. You can show.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Actually, let me launch something while we're doing it. But I want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. And again, our friends are out, so I am really appreciative of Scott helping me out today. And as we go through it, we're here to help you out. And so our goal is, first and foremost, is to answer your questions. So if you have questions, please, please, please take the time, go to the GoToWebinar questions panel, put your questions in on the topics we're covering or topics that you want to cover. And Scott will be monitoring that through the presentation, helping me out so I can focus or attempt to focus, and we'll have a lot of fun there. So that's the goal for today. Before we get started, I have a couple quick nice things going on. First is we have coming up the DevCon. I mean, we're already almost in August, which blows me away big time. So August, September, 2 months, really about 2 months, 2.5 months away. So if you haven't already registered, go to the Alpha Software DevCon 2022. Let me go ahead and put that in here in the chat and sign up. The really high quality event, super busy right now getting all the content prepared and ready to go. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's going to be presented at it, some things that are involved with Transform, with Alpha, a lot of neat new features and enhancements that make things easier for developers. So it's going to be a real fun event. So we really highly recommend you go and register if you haven't, and we are looking forward to seeing everybody there. And remember, one of the coolest things about it is that the super high quality recordings are made of all of the events. So even though it's a 4-day event, if you get busy, which everybody does, you can drop out, come back in and be able to capture and have all that available to you. So that's really exciting there. So with that, let's dive in and talk about today. So we have a new pre-release, and that is now available. And there's been some really cool, I'm going to call them enhancements. They're not earth-shattering, but taken together really lets you do some very interesting things. So what I'd like to do is cover those today of these different enhancements. And also, as Scott mentioned, there's also kind of a new feature in the XBasic editor that I think is awesome. I discovered it in this latest pre-release. I don't know how long it's been there. It may have been there a while longer. And in fact, it's been even more enhanced over the last couple pre-releases because I've been working with the team on that and said, hey, what about this? What about this? So it's really cool. Overall, you'll find if you're doing a fair amount of XBasic stuff, then you're going to be in great shape there. So first, let's go ahead and go through the custom components. Actually, even before that, I do want to go back to my development machine. Go all the way to my development machine. There we are. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down for a moment there. Our environment there. Okay. So you'll see right here that I am using the Alpha Universal Installer, which I really enjoy. And just, one thing I do is I actually have a couple projects now where the client has like a production system on one version of the Alpha and another one that's kind of pre-release that's on another. So this has been a godsend because it allows you to basically install different things on your site. So for instance, I have my developer stable edition. Again, it's at this time, it was like March 25th. There's actually an update available. So if I want to update, I just click update. But I kind of am working, that's kind of my production one right now. So I keep that stable from there. But that said, I was able to install the developer edition nightly build. And again, I am a little, the last one I did was on the 19th. I could actually install even a more new one, 20th, and be able to launch it from here. And then I just click launch from here. And updating is as simple as clicking a button there. So what's nice is they coexist very nicely on the machine. Now you do have to be a little careful, and this is just a word to wise, is that you need to make sure when you have, like, let's say I'm working on my production stuff, I'll launch this, I'll open the workspace. What I'll do is shut everything down, then launch this, and then open up the workspace I'm using with the new one. Because again, you got to be a little careful is that when newer versions come out, it may rewrite the code that's actually going to go on your server. So you don't want to actually have your developer edition out of sync with your server version. I hope that makes sense. You kind of want to make sure that they stay in sync at all time. So you just have to be that one, it's easy to install and launch this. But once you launch it, make sure you know which one you're using so you don't accidentally, like I don't want to pull my current production code into the nightly build one, because when I save it, it could rewrite some code that's kind of dependent new, and I try to publish it and weird things happen. So you just got to be a little, take a few moments just to take time on that. But once you get used to it, I just take the time of shutting everything down, then relaunching the version I'm going to work on. And then within there, you can then use the workspace open to open it. And I actually also tend to store my stuff that's production in one folder and my stuff that's pre-production or test in another, so I don't accidentally, it just gives me a little more control over the situation. So long-winded, basically, I love the installer. It works really good. It makes life easier, but you just have to be a little careful about making sure when you open a workspace, make sure you're opening it in the version you want it to be, because there's no checks by the system. It just says, I'm going to open that workspace. So, there's no, you could accidentally take your production code, open it into a nightly build, save it, and then you'd have to go back and reopen it. And usually you just have to reopen it in the production one and resave it, it'll rewrite everything, but you just want to be careful on that. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is talk, I'm going to be talking about, and let me go over here real quick, go to this. So we're going to cover some pre-release items, and actually production release of these should be out very soon. So I'm going to paste this into the chat window, and there's some really nice, neat new features. I'm going to cover a couple of them here that are for the next production release. And I find these are kind of nice enhancements that I'm starting to use more and more in terms of I'm planning on the next production release to use them in the system. I don't really use them in there until they've been baked and produced out there. So the first one I want to do, and let me go ahead and create a new UX here. And these are different features. Let's go ahead and go here. Okay. So obviously we have our different controls, but there's a really nice control called the tree control. And I've used it a fair amount. It's really nice for displaying things such as, bill of materials or any kind of hierarchical data. So I've added the tree control, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and put in my tree data Genie. I'm going to go ahead and add one, item 2, sub item 1, sub item 2. So I can do these hierarchical items there. And you'll notice that because I did tabs, it remembered how to do it. I could do them individually. Like I could say, oh, item 2, add a sibling. So I'm going to say that's item 3, and it allows you to build this up from there. And so this allows you to create a hierarchical menu sub, and it can be multiple levels, meaning I can go down as many levels as I want. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like real quick. And there is my items here. And this does obey the what would be called the theme. So I'm going to go ahead and use the compact theme with Alpha Blue 2. And when I do my preview here, you'll see that it's got a little nicer representation kind of scenario. It has nice things like you'll see hover over, click effects, etc. Really simple there. Now, a couple of things that are really nice about this control are the following. One is that you can populate it either through the Genie or through JSON or XBasic. So this is really important. Sometimes you just have a fixed menu. So you can just use the tree Genie, you go in and add the items, and then over here you can actually add icons, you can set up an on-click event, etc., even add security groups. So if you have like a fixed menu for your system, you can just go in here, set it, forget it, and you're good to go. And you can even include like server side of expressions. So it can look at other values like session variables and say, well, let's not show that because of this situation here. And so that's there. But what's kind of nice is that this also can be populated with either JSON or XBasic data. And that's really nice because then whenever you want to load a menu, you can do it dynamically. So on your server, you could generate a whole new menu structure based on, let's say, a bill of materials, let's say a organization hierarchy, etc. You don't have to manually do it. You can just generate the JSON data and it goes there. Now, it may look a little confusing, but it's actually pretty straightforward. HTML is just what you see right there. If I added any icon, it would show there. But you can see then there's this structure with children, etc. Now, JSON sometimes is like, ooh, okay, well, I have to kind of create this JSON. That may kind of be a pain in the tail, but it's not too bad. So the other way you can do is actually populate it with a XBasic array. And this may make the easiest for you. As you can see, we're basically creating a array, a pointer array, and then just populating, here's tree number 1, tree number 2, number 3, number 4. And so you can kind of look at it, and this, then you can create a little piece of code that generates this, and boom, it will generate this out. And again, if you add things like on-click events, values, icons, you'll see more and more data in this here. But the important thing about the tree control is the fact that it is not a static control, meaning that you can, if you so choose, populate it with JSON data or through an XBasic array, and it works really nice. And I've used this on a project where it was basically a bill of materials project where basically, you had a parent item with its children, and those children had children there. And so you could create this, and then basically on each one, you could say, okay, like edit that child. And then just to show you what it looks something like this, you'll see in working preview, over here, I would have my editor and I'd say, okay, I'm going to click on sub item 1, and it would open up over here. It would populate either a UX or open up a UX with some data. And so it became a really nice editor for that bill of material. And then you could add different stuff to, like, click buttons to say add a sub item, add a child. So you could essentially build your own sort of dynamic tree builder in the system. And it works really nicely. It looks good. It's super fast. And once you get the hang of, and that's really just the tricky part of, go back in here, of how to build this XBasic array, you're just iterating things through a, through a database table, and you say what's parents, etc. Pretty simple. Now, the real heart of what I want to talk today is this is cool. This is really nice, especially for hierarchical data such as organizations or bill of materials, etc. But this really makes a nice menu too, just for like saying, oh, I want to select this menu item over here. And I have also used this for that purpose there. But what's kind of cool on this over here is the fact there's a new feature in here that is called, that allows you to basically see this tree as, let me see, where is it? Render as. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side, you see render as tree. So that's right now, when I open it up, it's going to show up as a tree. But the new feature is you can render this as a menu bar. Now what you do is go into it. And now, instead of a vertical orientation, you now have this wonderful menu bar with sub-item there. And so for different situations, you now can use this as a menu bar at the top of your UX and add very complex menu structures by just merely clicking a button or changing it from a render as tree to menu bar. And again, everything else works the same. If I go into this tree data and I say, let's add an item here, and I'll call this menu 4, and I'll go sub menu 4.1. Do this working preview. You'll see now I have my new menu item here, and there's my submenu there. You'll need to probably set the width of this. So let's go ahead and set the width of this as 100%. And if we do that again, it should lay out a little nicer there because there's like a default. Yeah, see, now you can do from there. And now you have all these nice menu items with all the effects. So I really like this. I haven't used it yet because it is pre-release, but I'll be using it very soon because now you have a very compact menu, horizontal bar menu that takes up very little space compared to a tree menu. I also don't worry I have to share or things like that. There is, and then also what is that I can dynamically populate this menu by like who the user is, what their permissions are, etc. when it comes from there. Now, again, the only other thing that's got to be aware is that you'll notice that this one just kind of shows really the top level and which one you've selected. When you render this as a tree control, one of the benefits of the tree control is, let's call it a persistence of view. You can see the whole hierarchy from here. So again, if you're doing a table of contents, bill of material, this is going to be much more because you can see the structure of the data there versus a menu. But again, really nice way, easy way to create a menu. It is easy to set up with a built-in tree builder. You can kind of do that. And also you can then go down the road and make it very similar in terms of you can use dynamic population to make it so you can alter it on the fly, given the data, given the structure, whoever is working from there. So that's the new tree menu capability. Again, it's the tree control. So if you go add and go tree, it says tree, but now you can render it both as a tree and a menu bar, which is really, really nice. So that's the first one there. I'll hold the questions. I'll go through the next one. Then we'll do some questions if that's okay, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the second one I want to cover is a great control called the Tabbed UI Builder. And I'm sure you've used these things before. So let's go ahead and just add a couple components here. I'm not going to cover too much detail. I'm sure a lot of people have used this before, but basically this allows you to build essentially a pre-built structure, or so we'll call it a dashboard, or you got a header, you got your different controls here. These can be reports and stuff, and then it opens it up over here in a tabbed feature, so you can have actually multiple tabs open at one time. It's a great control. I mean, I use it a lot just because it is so quick to create a sort of a structure for my application. I can just focus on creating different things, throw them up here. And again, as I mentioned, on here, I can put in here components, I can put in reports, A5 pages, outside pages, PDF documents, etc. And I'm sure most people have used it before, which is pretty neat. Now, similar to the other control, one of the cool things about the tabbed UI is that you have a fair amount of control over how this left area is structured. So let's go ahead and show you an example of that. So I'm going to go over here to the containers, and I'm going to grab this here, and I'm going to add, oops, I got to just put it right here. I go here to containers. So this is how I can structure. So let me do a frame, and let's go ahead and do that here. So I added a frame control. It's not actually an entity, but it tells you formatting of how you want it to look. So you can go in here, you can add, and now you have this nice little frame, and you could group things together with different frames. Pretty handy. For simplistic menus, that's really handy, and I've used that before from there. Let's go ahead and delete that. Oops, let me go ahead and let's delete the end there. Yep, there we go. Okay, then you can also do container, empty container. This is nice if you're going to do some styling and some other things like that. You can also use tab controls, which again can create a whole tab control on the left. But I want to show you here is the tree control. So I'm going to insert there, and I'm going to insert around. I'm going to move this up here, and then I'm going to add one branch here. I'll go branch 1. And now I'm going to do another one called branch 2. And super important, if you put a branch, you have to actually enter in an item there. Okay, so let's do a working preview and take a look at this. And so now this allows you to create a nice looking setup, and this can be multi-levels deep. And it works the same way, but this really provides you a very powerful way to put a very sort of a lot of stuff on the left side. Instead of this big long list of stuff, you can just basically create these branches. Now you'll notice my branch 1 and branch 2, so I can actually move this one over. I think, let's see. There it is right here. You'll notice there's these little, and so I can move that over. So now when we're in there, you can see branch 1 and branch 2 are at the same level and easy to maintain from there. And you can do some other things that are kind of nice. Let's say, for instance, you always want this branch to be open. So you'll notice on the right-hand side, it says for this tree branch, let's go to open. And we can go in there, And you'll notice now when it opens up, instead of being all closed, the first branch is open, the second branch is closed. So you can kind of default what people use the most, so you save them a click every time they go from window. Now this has worked out really nice, but as again, you kind of take up space on the left. And if I close this, I have to reopen it to navigate from here. So it's sort of like the tree control. It gives you a nice structure view, but the downside of this is the fact that you lose some of your space on there. So in the new release, there's a new feature, and there's one little trick on it. So I can go to this tree control right here, and if I go over to the right here, you're gonna see a new feature here called display as expanding menu. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And you'll see, let's run it. There's a tricky part of this. You'll notice didn't exactly do what I wanted. I wanted to show as a expanding menu. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, that's been in there. Oh, let me cover that, sorry. This is a traditional tree control. I missed the wrong setting here. So let's see here. Notice it's kind of a traditional kind of older design there. But if you say expanding menu, what this will do is use the newer expanding menu feature, which is more HTML. So you'll notice it's got nice little opening and closing things, but this basically does it as an expanding menu control. So it's nice there. But actually what a feature I want to show you here is in, let's go to, where is that? Oh, right here. It's down here. Apologize. It's called render tree as menu bar. So, you know, much like I did this where I rendered this, see if I did it right here. I want to render this as a tree control. You can now take that left-hand side, which is great because if you used it already, as this. So now we can go into here and I can say render as menu tree bar. Now there's a trick to this. So watch what happens here. You'll see, wait a minute here, I didn't specify the menu bar element. So here's the tricky part of it. So you have to do two things. One is you have to, this one was simple. You just say render and it did it. But this one you have to do two things. First, you have to say render as menu bar, and then you have to give it an element where to display it from that standpoint there. So if we go to the tabbed UI properties here and follow along, you'll notice that we have our header text right here. And you can change this, like for instance, hello there. And what that does, it'll still throw an error, but that is controlled up here. So you notice this stuff's up here. So what you have to do is in this area right here, and this is just HTML, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go break. I'm gonna put a HTML break, and then I'm gonna put in here, and I'm gonna go div ID equals menu bar, and then close that and close it and say div. Okay, so this is all you have to do to help it out. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a div, and a div is just, for HTML, is a space on the screen. And again, if you know this, bear with us, but it's a little space, like it's a little like box or container on the screen, and you can give it an ID, whatever you want to call it. And what this does now is you'll see in here, wait for it, you'll see first that it's there, but you don't see it because it's sort of like a hidden structural element there. But what we want to do is take this new menu bar and place it in there. So remember, my div ID is called menu bar. So now I'm going to go here to my tree control, and I'm going to call this menu bar. And that's the menu bar element that it should go to. Let me make sure I did this right. There you go. Voila. What it did is it looked in this area here and it said, I'm looking for a div with an ID of menu bar. Now, very important, you have to be careful. This is case sensitive. So if you had said like capital M dash bar or whatever, but all you have to do is put a div in there, give that div an ID, and then in the control, tell it what that ID is. Now it knows where to put it. Now, why is that kind of cool versus just always defaulting right here? Because when I go back to here, I can add other stuff in here, a logo, an icon, etc., and I can tell it exactly where in that header section I want to say from there. So it allows me to do it. Like for instance, let's try this. Let's go, I think I can say how do I align a div? You can do alignments and other stuff with div. Let's see here. I'm just gonna play with this. I'm off script there. Okay. Okay, align equals. Bear with me. Let's try right first. Okay, cool. So let's give this a try. Let's save it. Oh, I won't have to say it. Go from here. So let's see what happens. Check it out. Now my menu is over here on the right. You go, oh, I don't like that. Let's go in here and let's change that to center. And now if we do working preview. So it's a little extra work where you put that, but the beauty of that is now you can use HTML to basically style and adjust and make things different. Oh, you can go crazy with it. It's pretty good. All it's doing is saying, where's that div? And then it writes the information in there. Now you'll notice, let's do one other thing. Well, this is dead area over here. So now we can go to the tabbed UI properties and I can say, for instance, hide the tab buttons. Let's go ahead and look at that. So that hasn't gotten rid of it, but I do hide tab and then I say permanently hide buttons plain or pane. That's that area on the left. Let's go ahead and there. My menu mouse a little crazy. Okay. Now you'll notice what it's doing here, permanently set that. And now I can just put my stuff in here and off to that. That's my other little control. That's why it looks strange, but I can go here and off to the races. It goes from there. So this really pretty cool stuff in terms of, the ability now, you notice I've gained all this left area here. I now have a very powerful menu system that is driven the exact same way you do it before using the standard tab control, and you're off to the races there. So it's a pretty handy way to make a very powerful. Now, one thing I want to show you is that when you are running this now, and I'd have to check with the team, but you'll notice now you don't have the multi-tab interface. So it's up to you. This is more of a, let's call it a mono-focused interface, where each time you do this, it's going to open it in this area versus creating tabs within it, because that would get a little confusing. So this is more oriented towards a single level where you're doing a tab interface where you're saying, okay, I'm going to open up one thing at a time and focus on that versus having multiple tabs open at one time. But there are certain situations where this is actually easier for users, less confusing, but for other users, they may want to have multiple tabs open where they're editing different things at the inner time. So I'd say, like, if you had, for instance, a consumer portal you were building, well, often they're pretty monotasking. I'm looking up this, I'm adjusting this. So this is a much more efficient user interface than going back and setting up like tabs and confusing them with tabs. But if it was an inside person, then I may lean towards tab and then use it from that standpoint there. So that is the other new feature. And again, as I put on the controls, get rid of this. They're outlined. There's more videos for that as on this pre-release note. So let's take a stop here and let's go ahead and open up for any questions about these. But I do have one other thing I want to cover, and then we can go into general questions. So let's see if there's any questions regarding this.
Yeah, we'll save the less specific things for later, but more specific to this, we definitely have a few questions.
Good, excellent.
Yeah, like one of them was, when adding an icon to the menu, can the icon be set above the text?
At this time, I'm not aware of that. Let's go ahead. And this was in here, I believe. Yeah, in the tree control. So let's go ahead and go into the tree data Genie. Let's open that up. Oh, cancel. Oh, I don't want JSON. I want tree data Genie. There we go. So you can add an icon here. So I can select this here. I'm trying to see if there's any HTML. You might be able to embed it actually in here with some HTML. I haven't tried that. Let's try this. Let's go BR. Let's see if it renders as that. I think that's just going to be straight text, but let's do one other thing here. Yeah, you'll notice that it put the icon there, item 1 test, below it. So I wonder if you actually put, and I'm just playing here and you'd have to play with it, but if I put this SVG icon, let's try putting it right there in front of it. This may not work because it may not understand a rendered as that. So let's see what happens. Yeah, it rendered it as text, but I think we could probably put a tag in there possibly. So that's the only way I know of putting possibly a icon on top of it is changing the item HTML description here. I don't think there's a setting per se in terms of the icon on top of it. Normally when you put an icon, it's going to show up in the left side of whatever text is displayed. But you can play with this, like I think that if we just did that with an image tag, let's try this. Don't I just put img and it's ref, right? Or something like that.
imgsrc or no.
And then I'm not a super. Let's try this real quick. I'm going to do one other lookup. We'll go to the Googles. Okay, let's look at it. You got to go source equals. Okay. So what I did is I put an image tag with that as the source, and let's see what happens. Nah, it's not showing that image tag. It's there, you can see it allocated the space, but it's not rendering it. So you'd have to play with it a little bit more, but that's the only way I can imagine you would be able to set up there from that standpoint. Good question. I apologize. We don't have an instant answer for you on that.
We can look into that a little more, I suppose. Yeah, we had some other questions about the tree control here too. You know, how does it look as a mobile app?
It renders nicely as a mobile app. Again, you can set up, to show things a certain way. Oops, I hit the wrong button here. You can wrap this and set it up with a dynamic to show one kind of control one way and another way. So it does look really nice on a mobile app because it is a responsive little app or control.
Great. Let's see here. Also, sorry. Trying to make some sense of some of these here. It's more of a comment. I think some of these other questions are a little bit more general and like not quite so specific.
Yeah, why don't we come back to those in a few minutes? Great.
Do things still open in tabs at the top? That was while you were working, and I think so. How the context of that in this moment was a little unclear.
Okay. Go ahead and go on there. Okay. So what I'd like to do is, this is kind of a cool thing near and dear to me. Okay. And I'm just going to create some controls on this. Let's do it all lowercase. Okay, there's 2, 3. Okay. So this is a cool little feature for people who are doing like XBasic callbacks. So often a pattern will be, you'll have fields on the screen, and what you'll want to do is make a call back to the server, grab that information, manipulate it, update tables, do anything else, and then return that data back to the user interface. And it works great. It's been there forever. So let's go ahead add a new XBasic callback, Ajax. Okay, and I'll call this test function. Now, one thing that's nice when you're doing it, if you click here for create function prototype, it writes a little function sort of holder with a bunch of sample text. And then I can just click here and say open XBasic function declarations and paste it, which is the same thing as clicking here on XBasic functions and pasting it there. So now I have a button here. When I click on that, it's going to run and go run this function right here. And as you can see, there's a bunch of things you can do in it. There's all this text that this is all how to get information from there. Now, the cool new feature is this, is usually you have to sit there and say, okay, I've got, let's say I want to take the value of text1 and text2 and add them together and then send it out to text3. So I'll go in here, and this is how I would regularly do it. I would go into XBasic, I would say, you know, dim, and it should be number 1, but text1 as in, dim, text2 as in, okay, and then I'll just say dim text3 as in. So I've dimensioned those as ins because what I want to do is treat the data when it comes in. So I'd normally go ahead and I go, okay, text1 is equal to e.data submitted. Oops, I've got misspelling. Submitted dot text1. So the standard way of this is e.data submitted, say goes give me, and then here's the field name. So now I can copy that, put it right here and go text2. Now I can sit there and go, okay, text3 is equal to text1 plus text2. Now what I want to do is I want to set the value. And of course, because of history, I have to do something like e._set dot text3 dot value is the old text3. Now I've done this enough, so I kind of know this, but as you can see, you know, typing errors, everything else, kind of a pain in the tail. So if I run this, what's going to happen is it'll declare these variables as in. It goes and grabs whatever data was submitted back that was in text1, puts it into the value of text1, does the same thing for text2, adds them together, and then I send that information back. But as you can see, a lot of typing prone. If I make a mistake, like if I say there and I miss a T, it's going to blow up. So very cool. In the latest release, I can say text1 is equal to, and notice up right here, up the top, it says Control D displays a list of controls. So let's go ahead and hit Control D. Aha, opens up a window and it shows the different controls that are on my UX. I can say, oh, text1, and notice my commands down here. Oh, add an e.data submitted. Boom. It basically writes all this code for me, and it's perfect code, meaning that it's spelled correctly, it's the same. I can do the same thing here. I can say text2 is equal to, notice I don't have to mouse, I just say, oh, text2, and I want that, and click OK. Now, what's even neater is, let's say I'm ready to go ahead and write it back to it, but I don't have to remember all that gobbledygook. I can just say Control D, text3, and I want to add set a prefix and value. So it writes this with the dots and the underscore, so it's perfect. So I've started using this in my initial test of this. Amazing. It reduces my little errors of, oh, I misspelled the field, I misspelled e dot or this or that. It just makes me much more productive from there. And all you have to do is where you are in your point, you just hit Control D, pick the control and do it. And in fact, it'll even do something kind of cool too. So let's go test is equal to, and I'll Control D, text3, set argument value. It writes basically adding an argument. And I don't know if you use arguments, but I use them a fair amount. It's basically sort of think of it as a variable that's associated with this UX. It basically says take the value of the field and set that argument. And then that argument's available in like other XBasic callbacks, is available in a whole bunch of other places you can use it from there. So that's the new XBasic thing. It's really just a productivity improvement. All you have to do is wherever you're in XBasic, you hit Control D, pulls up a list, you pick what you want to do with it, insert it, and it inserts this perfect code. And I highly suggest playing with it because, again, when you move on to the new release, because you'll find you'll probably save, a few minutes here, a few minutes here. You're doing less debugging. Your code is cleaner. Code is more consistent in terms of spelling, etc. And I love it. I think it's awesome. It just really, for me, and for any time I'm doing XBasic callbacks, it's like a go-to thing, easy to do it, and highly recommend you check it out. So that's the new XBasic feature. Nothing really earth-shattering, but again, it's one of those things that I love the alpha developers. They themselves are developers, so they'll say, God, I'm so tired of typing e.data submitted and misspelling it every fourth time. Why don't I just say Control D, do this, boom, and it writes perfect code every time. And that's similar to like using, for instance, the Genies to do things like write XBasic SQL actions. Again, I don't know if you've used that before, but it basically writes a nice little piece of XBasic, walks you through it. And again, the code is complete and correct so that you don't have to worry about misspellings. It can write 20 lines of code in a few moments. So it's pretty nice there. Similar Stripe, Square, these things too allow you to write code that will contact and touch base with it. Like I want to do billing, this writes all this code for you so you don't have to, which is really nice because then your productivity goes way up and you can then adjust it as needed, but it's super easy and super fun to play with. So that's the new little Control D XBasic function. So let's go ahead and if there's questions on that, let me know. If not, we'll just go ahead and open up to general questions and go from there.
I do have some questions about that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. One was args.add or args.set ?
Yeah, so args.add, it means that the argument, okay, so if I'm gonna set an arg, okay, I'm on a UX here. If I go to properties of the UX and I look for arguments, oh, look, wait. This I didn't see before. Oh, cool. That's something new too. Instead of having to click properties and search it here, they've actually just put it right here. I don't know how long that's been in there. Sorry, everybody, but I can just sit there and go arguments. There's my arguments. That is kind of cool. So I can insert a new argument, and I'm going to call this test arg type character. Okay. So now if I go back to my XBasic stuff, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert, I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to say text3 set argument value of test arg. So you'll notice that it even says, oh, do you have an existing add? So you go there, and you'll notice that it does a add that right there from there and does all the things like telling it, well, it's a character. So it makes sure if this is a numeric value, it gets converted to a character, etc. I think you can also do e.args. I think set, and it's very simple. Let's actually look down here. I would use the pre-made so the code is perfect. It does other, it's got a good practice like converting the type before it sets the argument. But let me find. Actually, I think we have to go into server side function. Yeah, so notice there's another format here called e-argument set. So I'm just going to go back here. I think they both work, but I think anytime you add, it's going to overwrite the existing argument with that. So I would use the Control D, but you're welcome to use either one. But I would do something like this where I control copy that and use that as this information here so it gets done correctly. So these are equivalent statements. The only thing is arg set, this argument has to be done in properties before it can be used, whereas arg add, it will basically add it if it doesn't exist. Otherwise, I think it overwrites if it does exist.
All right.
Good question.
Yeah. Here's another one for you. Can you please, how about this? Can you add your own saved code to the Control D function?
Not to the Control D function, but there's a really nice feature in here called code library. So let's say I use this code all the time right here. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to highlight the code and I'm going to go right click, code library, add selected text to the code library. And I'm going to call this my cool code. Okay. Okay, now, whenever I need to use that, I can right click on the white space, go to code library, and I have to set it to default so it comes up right. You go code library and check that out. Notice my new code's right there, touch it, puts it right in there. So you can actually, and it's very nice, you can take any code you have and use the code library to add that to it. Now, one thing that's really cool too, if I go to my code library, let me go here. Let's go, actually, I think you can edit. And what's kind of cool when you create it is you can actually put variables and stuff like that. So the code library is very powerful. So when you paste it, it can ask you a couple little questions like, and it will replace certain items in your code. But again, just check out the code library here. And this will tell you a lot about that. And again, I probably have, this is a new project, but normally I have like 20 things on there because I'm always writing the same code over and over. And again, it's like the Control D, it allows you to insert existing code that's been pre-written and you just have to edit and modify it. Really saves you an enormous amount of time every time. Good question.
Great. Yeah, and we have another related to the XBasic feature, and that is...
that was more popular than I thought.
Yeah. Could you please show how to use data binding with the new XBasic feature?
Data binding. Oh, interesting. Well, okay. So let's go ahead and do this. Actually, before I do that, let me go to my alpha DAO connection string. Oh, I do have alpha A demo. Okay. So let's go back in here to this one here. Go to controls. So the idea is if I want to, and I'm assuming this is what the person's asking for, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to data bind this information to the database. So I can go here to properties, and I'm sorry, data binding. I can bind the controls of your field to one or more existing tables. So first you have to specify the table. I have to specify the control or the connection string. And then I can add a table and select whatever table it is. Let's say it's customers. So basically what I've done here is I've said, okay, this UX, I want to be bound to this table. So therefore, Alpha will write the information to load that data into it for me. Now that I've done that, I can go here and go through each individual text and tell it, oh, this field on the screen should be related to this here. And so now it's going to populate in that text one control, the customer ID text two here. There are faster ones. I'll show you that in a moment to do this, but this allows you to go, okay, I want to bind this UX to the database table. So now what you can do, once you've done that, I will run it and you'll see, for instance, when it opens up, these are empty. And the reason they're empty is that I have to tell Alpha to go ahead and bind, like I've kind of set the pointers between the UX and the database. But now what I can do is go to control or go to this server side and I can say action script, populated data from one or more tables. And I can go here. I can just call it one. And oh, I think it's primary key is probably alpha key. And let's see if that works and does the. Yep. So notice that when I loaded this, and this is the tricky part, I kind of hard coded this to alpha, although you could pass that in as a variable. So when you open this up, you give it a variable, but you'll notice that I didn't have to write any other code because what it's going to do is when this opens up, it says, okay, I'm going to go to the database. I got the data. Then I'm going to look at that mapping on the data bind and say, oh, I'm going to put the customer ID here, this here. So it does write all that code for you. Now, to make your life easier, if you're starting out from scratch, this is how I do it. I go new, UX, and I create a UX. Then I do the following. I go add control text box because I'm going to standardize them as text box for editing. But you'll notice in the lower corner, there's something that says populate list from a table. So I click that. I can then connect, sort of what I did before on data bind. I say, oh, I'm going to use this connection string and I'm going to use this table and I'm going to click OK. And watch what happens. It's going to ask me a couple questions. But now what it's done is it's created a field for each field in the table. It has also gone through and bound that data to that field. It's all added some standard buttons in it. And really nicely, it's already written that on dialog initialize code and on save data quote. So now when I click preview, it's done all the work for me. So now I have this going on here. I can go to the next record. All this is wired for me. Then if I want to edit it, I can just I can go into the data binding. And here's all I can edit, change it, delete, and do all those things there. So usually when I'm doing data binding, I start at this point because then I can just delete the things I don't want, rearrange them on the screen. But if you already have a screen built, you can always go through the process I did where you went into data binding, selected what table, mapped it, and then added the code in to populate that in the screen. So that's I hope that answers the data binding question, how you do it. And again, the nice thing about all that is now I didn't have to go through, actually it's this one, I think. I didn't have to do all this stuff, like to call the database and stuff. It wrote all that code for me, but I still have the ability to use this to say, take the internal data or the data from the UI, take it into the XBasic, modify it, and then send it back out. So again, I hope that answered. If I didn't, let me know, but hopefully that'll give some insights to folks that are starting to do more.
I think it did answer the question there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there was some appreciation that came back for you on that. I also, there was one question that came in earlier. I apologize for not catching this sooner.
Oh, no, it's
fine. On the previous part of the demo of the tree control, there was a moment where I think that there was maybe some reference to an unclick or something, and they were,
oh, yeah.
Is the unclick represented in the JSON XBasic 2? If so,
yeah.
If so, how?
So like, just do this and I'll say alert, hello. So I could put my own JavaScript in there. Okay, and it'll check it there. Now, what I'd probably like to do is add a effort here. I'll say test. I'm going into the XBasics action generator because now I can do much more sophisticated stuff. I can even do multi-step things. Okay. And I say okay, and then I click here to grab that code to run that. Then I can go back in here and go to say, let's go to sub item 1 and put it in there. In fact, I don't even have to grab it. I can just go up here after I've created my action JavaScript and insert the code there, and we'll put it on there. Now, if I go show the JSON data, you'll see that here is the HTML for the title. It's kind of screwed up because I did the SVG stuff, but notice there's also a parameter called onClick, and you'll see it's the same thing other than in these two things. Here was that code I wrote myself, and this is the code that Alpha wrote right here. So when you dynamically create this, you can create JavaScript to insert for it to run. And usually, so the way I did it before is I pre-created all of the actions that I wanted to run, and I pre-created those. And therefore, when I render, I say, oh, this menu item should do X, Y, Z. I tell it to run an action. Now, one other third option you can do, which he's probably made, you can create a JavaScript function. So let's go function. And I apologize for folks who aren't coder tour type. So run this, and this actually makes it, so then I just embedded saying when this function is run that action. And so now all I have to do is in my menu to make it even look a little nicer, go to this. It's a little more work, but then I just have to say, oh, run this little command here, run this. And what that does is really run the action JavaScript, but it makes it a little more readable. So when I actually show this, you'll notice that the onClick function is something very simple. It's not kind of a lot confusing to see. You can do it. So the way I did it on this other project is first I created my JavaScript actions, then I mapped them, and when I build the menu, I just insert whatever function I want to run for that particular click event. This stuff is always the same, so it's basically like a string replacement process you go through to build this. And the other thing that's kind of nice is, and this is a little more advanced, you'll notice this is JSON. So let me go ahead and copy that. And I'm going to go ahead and just for giggles, what you can do, which is kind of cool with alpha, is you can create a pointer variable, and that pointer variable can generate the JSON for you. So I'll go dim JSON menu, and this is just a pointer. It's equal to, let's go back. What is it? Yeah. Copy it. Might help. Okay. So this is the JSON here, and then I can go, my pointer is equal to, and this is a little more advanced, so bear with me, JSON parse JSON, our menu JSON, debug 1. And I'll do this really quickly. Oh, it didn't like that. So I'll have to check on that. Might have been something. I'll have to check that. Let's see. But what you can do, which is kind of cool, is you can create a pointer variable that mimics this structure, and then it will convert it into JSON. So you don't have to write, and that's why I kind of tend to tell people, if you're doing this, focus more on the XBasic array, because even then you'll notice here, oh, the tree number 1 on-click event is alert hello. So you'll see right here. So this is easier, to be honest, to put together in like a loop than JSON sometimes. So, look at both, but the beauty of it is you can render these on the fly. The rendering can include the icons you use. It can also include the on-click JavaScript to run. Really good stuff. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm sorry, that kind of went into the weeds a bit, but hopefully give you a pointer for how you would maybe make this stuff dynamic.
Great. Well, I think that was appreciated too. We're getting pretty close to the end here, but we do have a couple more general questions.
Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. One of them that came in early on was, how do I adjust CSS for a selected row in a panel?
Okay, selected row in a panel or a list control?
CSS for, it says in a panel.
Okay. We're probably gonna have to come back to you on that, because with if you're gonna do any adjustments, you can use the web style builder, and then from there it has things like selected row, etc. So I would look into the web style builder. It's a little work. You track down where that element is, and you can adjust the CSS right there. And then the nice thing is that permeates your whole system. Meaning if you assign that style to a single UX or to the project using project style, then it's going to show up everywhere, so you can adjust it in one spot.
Yeah. All right. One last one real quick here is, how do I get the file name of an image acquired using the image capture JavaScript action?
Ooh, interesting. Let's look at that image capture. So let me go here. No, that's fine. So let's try this out. So I'm going to add a button. Okay, so there are image capture here, and these give you hooks there. If you're using text mode, let's say it is JavaScript action. So let's try that. Capture. Let's go ahead and do there. Okay. So what will happen is JavaScript exit. Now, if I click here, this will tell you in here how to grab the image name from there. So it'll tell you the source. So there's a little geeky in there, but what happens is when the image capture is done, it does all the work for you. It'll recite, it'll do everything else, but then it's going to run this JavaScript. And in this JavaScript, you can then say, grab the data, set a field on the screen and save that information, or do something along those lines. So this is where you would go to find that information about that file, what the name of the file is. Because you can also get EXIF information, which is extended information file, like where was that picture taken, the latitude, the longitude. So you can really grab like the resolution, the camera type, etc. is all done within here. And like you look here, it says the e-file system URL is available. So can select video, that can give you the URL, and from the URL you can usually extract the file name that's associated with that entity.
Great. Yeah, we've run out of time. So, if there were any other unanswered questions, please send them into guides@alphasoftware.com, and we would love to respond to those as soon as we can. And Dion, thank you so much for this great presentation.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to do it again soon.
Me too. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming out. We'll talk to you again next week. Hopefully we'll have another great presentation to share with you. And
same bat time, same bat channel.
Absolutely right. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.